All right, so one of the things that I want to go over with you here in this particular video is the actual use of different types of tools that are up on our toolbar. So um, there are a large amount of tools, and if the more we get to understand and know how to use these, the better off we're going to be as we start to draw and model in Fusion. So I'm going to start out. This video is all going to be on the actual 2D tools. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to click left click on Start a Sketch, and I'm going to come in here and we're going to sketch on the front view. Now, we're not actually going to sketch here. I'm just going to use and show you the different types of tools that we have up here. And you can kind of see all these on your own, but sometimes it's easy if somebody kind of comes in and helps with that. So, and explains these to you. So anytime you hover over one of the tools, if you leave it there, it will kind of give you some information about that tool and prompt you on how the tool actually gets used. So we do have the line tool that can be used to create lines. So, and we have the 2-point rectangle tool. So we'll talk a little bit more about the different types of rectangle tools that we could have. This one, of course, shows that it will be a diagonal to diagonal rectangle tool. We got a center diameter circle, so this will create circles of a certain diameter. We have a spline tool. Uh, we'll talk more about the use of a spline later on in the semester. We have a mirror tool, and then we have our dimensioning tool. So anytime you see a drop down arrow, that means there's more things and more tools available in that particular panel. Autodesk, usually when they do this, they would refer to this as a panel, and this is the create tool panel. So now notice here on the rectangle tool, we have several different options. We can do a 2-point rectangle from corner to corner. We can do a 3-point rectangle. I honestly don't really use that one too often, although some of this is preference. And then I have a center rectangle where you start at the center and kind of move out from there and then set your dimensions. So we have 3 different rectangle tools that we can use to create that rectangle. Here in the circle, we also have several different types of circles that we can create as well. So we've got a center diameter circle. We have what is called a 2-point circle, a 3-point circle, a 2-tangent circle, and a 3-tangent circle. So this week and next week, we'll be running through some activities so that you can kind of get a better idea of how each of these tools work. We also then have the arc tool. So, and there's a 3-point arc tool, a center point arc, and a tangent arc. Each of these has a specific use, and you'll start to learn when you should use one over the other based on what you're doing. We've got the polygon tool. Now remember, here's some terminology here that we referred to before. So the circumscribed polygon and the inscribed polygon. And then we also have an edge polygon. So we have 3 polygon tools. And of course, when we go to click on that polygon, we'll be able to create triangles, octagons, hexagons, whatever size that you would want to be able to use for that. We have an ellipse tool. We've got a slot tool. Now, overall, we are going to draw slots on a face. There's several different ways here, depending on whether they're kind of blind slots or pockets on a part, or if they are actually through. So sometimes there are different ways that we can kind of achieve that when we're modeling as well. But this gives you a breakdown of all the different types of slots that we might be able to generate. And then, of course, here is our spline tool. So we got a fit point spline and a control point spline. Probably one of the harder ones to get used to knowing. We have a conic curve. So we have a point where we can add a point. We have text that we can also do. Now, then again, we've got the mirror tool, the circular pattern, and a rectangle pattern. So we will kind of go through what all of those are as well. And then we've got some projection here, tools, and and then some dimensioning tools. So that is everything that's going to be in our two-dimensional geometry here for creating this geometry. Next, let's move over here to the Modify panel. Up top, we see a fillet where we can generate a arc or a radius about a part or two lines, so-called a fillet tool. We have a trim tool, which is where when we get extra lines that we don't want, we can trim and cut those out. So we have an offset tool, which is very useful to be using. We have a blend curve, so where we can kind of smooth out and make sure that our geometry is correct on that. Let's again click the drop down arrow here, and you'll see not only do we have the fillet tool, but we also have a chamfer tool. And there are three types of chamfers that we can do, where we can have the distance equal. Notice the pop-up windows that come up and kind of explain that tool to you when you hover over it. Distance and angle chamfer, or a two distance chamfer if we've got different dimensions that we can apply. So three different ways. Probably the equal distance chamfer is the most common one out there in order to be using it. Now, in addition to trimming lines off, sometimes we might be too short on a line, so we can also extend it. Sometimes we might want to break a line so that we can kind of find a point and go off of a point. So we can scale our sketches and make them different sizes. And then, of course, we can also move and copy. So those are the modified tools here on our two-dimensioning sketching. The next panel over is what we call the constraints. So let's kind of go through geometric constraints. When we draw, sometimes constraints are automatically applied. Sometimes we have to actually apply them. So we've got a horizontal and vertical constraint that's going to make that line either horizontal or vertical. We have what we call a coincident. So we have a tangent. We can make things equal to each other. We can make things parallel to each other. And when I say things, I really, the terminology is an entity. So if I have a point, that would be an entity. If I have a line, that would be an entity. An arc or other geometric shapes would be considered entities. So we can kind of draw two circles. We can make and apply an equal constraint onto that. No matter what change we make to the one, it will also change the other. So parallelism, we've got perpendicularity. We can fix or unfix those, so we can lock what we want, and then it doesn't automatically kind of change. Or if we kind of make some mistakes, it won't change that. If that dimension or if that feature is that critical, we can more or less fix that and lock it so that it doesn't get changed. So of course this is the sign, and you'll see we can add for our midpoint. This means that the two circles would be concentric. So we've got what we call the collinear. If we got two different lines, we can make them collinear. So, and of course you can see we've got the symmetry tool and we've got a curvature tool here as far as all of the different constraints we have. Now, at this point, that's all of our sketch tools that we have for 2D sketching. So I'm not going to go over anything with the configure aspect right now. We will talk more about that later. So I kind of consider this advanced stuff here, but we can also do what we call an inspection. So if we're not sure of a entity or its size, we can also come over here and we can kind of select some things. We can measure. We can do some different analysis here, so we can kind of see if things are interfering with each other. There are other things that we can do. Most of this I kind of consider a little bit more advanced at this point. So, but notice we can determine center of mass. That's pretty useful from a engineering standpoint. So we'll probably be using that. We can kind of do a section analysis here as well. But some of this other stuff is a little bit more advanced for what this class goes into. The predominant thing that you're probably going to be wanting to know and be able to use right now is the measure tool and the center of mass tool. And then we've got some insertion tools here that you can kind of go through. some selection tools where we can kind of change the way we're taking a look at the windows or paint and so forth. But majority of your tools are going to be from the constraints, modify, and create, a little bit here in the inspection as well. So that is our two-dimensional sketching tools and kind of an quick explanation of what you need to be aware of and how you're going to use those tools.